Gordon, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the world you're in. But thank you so much for joining us here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
I hear you loud and clear, and I'm
Great.
excited to have the conversation. But for the folks at home that might not be familiar with your company, give us a brief overview. What is it that you do?
Well, we are copper in America, made by Americans for Americans. We are World Copper. We have the Zonia Project in Arizona. Zonia is in the Yavapai province, and we actually are looking at starting up our operation in the next couple of years. However, we have copper and more copper than we can count at Zonia. It's really exciting for us. The United States needs copper to compete against China and to build its electric vehicles, to build its wind turbines, and its solar panels. We are going to meet some of that demand.
You know, so much of my growing up was, hey, if you want to get inexpensive labor, you go overseas. What advantages do we have by mining it in the U.S.?
Well, the advantage we have in the U.S. is that Arizona is the largest copper producing state in the United States. It's number 7 on the Fraser Index, which is very high. We can probably produce. We've got 1 billion pounds of copper at Zonia. We could produce 100 million pounds a year at Zonia, and we can do it economically because we're on private land. We have power on site, we have water on site, and the strip ratio is 1-to-1, so it's ready. It's basically the ore sticking out of the ground. That mitigates any kind of labor costs that you're sort of comparing in China. This project is ready to go, and the fact that everything's ready to come out of the ground makes it cheaper.
Is there anything else that's unique about the Zonia project, that our viewers should know about?
Yeah, there is a unique aspect of it. We actually just discovered that there's 7 million tons, or about 50 million pounds of copper that sits right on top of our leach pads. It means the previous owner, this was a previous mine, so the previous owner actually brought ore out of the pit, crushed it, put it on the leach pads, but he ran out of money. And so this metal is sitting on top of the leach pad, which means that all we have to do is to move it from the old leach pads onto new leach pads and process it, which means I can get probably at $4 copper, $200 million in cash before I even get into production. So that's a really big plus for World Copper and for Zonia.
Yeah, especially with the amount that you have there. Let's talk about the ESG efforts and how you can ensure that your mining practices are environmentally friendly, because that's what so many people are focused on when it comes to drilling and other aspects of our world.
Yeah, good question. We are an oxide deposit, so just de facto, we don't have a smelter that smelts the product, and we don't have a concentrator which creates deleterious or bad materials. We basically use what's called an SX.V, solvent extraction electrowinning system. So it is more environmental, lower footprint, lower cost. We use very little materials that could hurt the environment. Additionally, we're looking at going at net zero. So that means we're looking at powering the project with solar panels and using either electric vehicles, trucks, and haulers and shovels to take the material out of the pit. So we are looking at being environmental. We already are environmental by the fact that we use an SX.V process, but we're actually looking at augmenting that by adding those other features of solar power and electric vehicles.
Now, so many of these ideas are great. They sound good on paper. The execution is where it kind of comes into play, led by the team that you have. So what kind of experience does your leadership team have to make sure that this goes seamlessly as you're expecting?
So my head of technical is a guy named Derek White. Derek had built the Sierra Gorda copper mine in Chile. He built the Carlota copper mine in Arizona. That's an SX.V mine. He built the Frankie mine in BC, and he built the Premier mine. He's recently just turned that on in British Columbia. Joe Phillips is also my co-head of technical. He's built 11 copper mines in 14 different countries. I've been in this business since the early 2000s. I was with Mag Silver and with New Pacific Metals, took them to billion-dollar market cap companies. So on the technical side, we can build copper mines. And on the market side, we know how to make sure that our investors are well taken care of, informed, and we do the right thing in the governance side to make sure that we grow the company on a value basis.
I want to talk about a global expansion and the and the assets that you might be able to get from there. But I don't know if I asked you, Zonia Project, do we have an estimated value on that? Or was that the 7 million that you had mentioned, or was that how much you had?
No, the 7 million I was talking about was 7 million tons of ore on the
right.
beds. Right now, the market's giving us a $25 million market value, market cap value. My experience is I've taken Mag Silver was 50 million when I started. When I finished, it was 2.5 billion.
Wow.
New Pacific was 100 million. When I finished, it was 1.5 billion. When we grew it in value to its real valuation, at 25 million for World Copper, I think that the Zonia project alone could be worth $500 to $600 million, just alone with the 200 million tons, basically a billion pounds of copper that it has. It's worth, and you do that times 4.
Yeah.
It's worth at least $500 to $600 million.
Now, going back to the global expansion side of things, what does a broader market look like for copper? Is it kind of like a global energy transition that's going to impact the demand? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pretty obvious that if you're trying to decarbonize the world or hit net zero by 2030, I'm pretty sure we won't make that. Yeah. 2050 is another question, but to get there, we need so much copper, and you need lithium, but you need copper as well to get there. We don't have enough. We don't have enough mines right now that are going into production to produce even a tenth of what we need. That's why Zonia is important. We are 1 billion pounds rather than 3 billion pounds. Yeah. But we can get this thing into production in 3 to 4 years. So that's the main thing. There's a deficit. You need to take care of it quickly. Smaller, more nimble projects like Zonia are what the world needs right now to get the copper online.
All right. Well, hey, look, I appreciate the conversation, but before we kind of wrap things up, was there anything else that I missed to bring up that you wanted to let our viewers know about?
No, other than the fact that my wife's a little worried because I'm getting out of bed at 5:30 in the morning because I'm so excited about getting this thing into production. We have a real chance here to make an impact on the copper market with Zonia, and we're working hard, and we will get the project, and our shareholders will benefit from the work that we're going to be doing, putting this into production.
Well, I know we've got a mining webinar later on in August. We hope you'll be joining us there. But Gordon, thank you so much for your conversation here today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Nick.